Hello and welcome. So in the last episode, we started off getting the key to the basement, or as I like to call it, the basement key. And now we're going to take on the Demon of Capra, or the Capra Demon. This boss is really fun, but the room is incredibly tight, and there are these two dogs that just make it such a tedious adventure. After that, though, we get to go on down to the depths, and obviously I'm going to take care of the channeler with no problem whatsoever, because the first channeler gave me such an issue. But that dragon of gaping, the gaping dragon, he kind of got me a couple times.
I've never seen the movie Teeth, but this is what I imagine it's like. Okay, but quit spamming the same move! What was that?
And I think when I opened up the gate to Blighttown, I was a little more ambitious than what would follow, because
This is where the fun begins.
anyway, down here at the bottom I killed a few of these slugs. If you were wondering what that key I missed in the last episode was, again, please do not bring up the crow. We're not going to talk about it this time. Maybe next time. Not this time. The key actually allows the player to get the rusted iron ring, which allows one to move faster in difficult terrain, or move at normal speed in difficult terrain so it doesn't feel like you're walking through molasses. But down here in the swamp, I get the 5 green titanite that I need, and then I start the big ol' run back to Andre the blacksmith. And actually, I think I'm gonna have that playing somewhere down here while I show you all how the run down to Blighttown went, because I think they are about the same length, even though you'll see that the distance covered is far greater when you consider leaving Blighttown than when arriving in Blighttown.
Sometimes I like to think about the fact that I picked the pendant as a starting gift and how funny I thought that would be.
Another person we got while we were in the depths was Laurentius of the Great Swamp. He's going to give us pyromancies. We aren't really going to use that this round, but he's a really nice guy, so we're always happy to have him.
We have a new problem. It's noisy, it snores, and its breath is lethal. This is no laughing matter.
That's a pretty mean way to talk about Laurentius.
And while the rest of the sort of nitty gritty of beating the bosses happens, I'm just going to let you all know what happens. In this episode, I'm going to ring the second bell of awakening. We are going to meet this primordial serpent, who will then tell us that our fate as an undead, the chosen undead, is to succeed the Great Lord Gwyn. Now, I mean, I alluded to this several times earlier because this is Firelink Shrine, the Shrine of Linking Fires. What other possible conclusion could you come to? But in the areas to come, we are going to go through Sen's Fortress, we're going to reach Anor Londo, and perhaps somewhere along the way, we're going to learn that not everything in this world is as it seems. You see, the path of the chosen undead is presented to us as if it's our calling in this world. But the reality of the situation is that this world is far deeper than our individual experience as the chosen undead could allow us to even see. When you consider that while playing the game, your character goes through the process of hollowing, and what hollowing is, that flame inside that begins to fade. And we live in the Age of Fire in the Land of Lords, Lordran, and the fire is fading. So while this fire is fading, we progressively hollow from our undead selves into the monsters that we're fighting. And these hollow stand around seemingly without purpose, but actually to guard the status quo. They want things to remain the way they have been. They believe in Gwyn, the great Lord of Sunlight, protecting the Age of Fire. They do not believe the legends of the chosen undead. And while they may have once been undead, going through the process of hollowing has lost them that very humanity that once granted them the ability to think and reason for themselves. They themselves have also begun to fade alongside the flames. And that's why, as the chosen undead, what our actual job is to bring about an era of peace, an era where we're not dependent on some source of fuel, souls of lords that we found within the flames. Why did we have to kindle? Should we examine the right of kindling? I think, honestly, I may go down to the Tomb of the Giants because two things. One, that's where I can upgrade my weapon to +10. But also, there's a character named Rhea who I think would be incredible to get to meet before we go into Anor Londo. And I know it seems like I keep pushing things off because typically no one goes to Pinwheel before Anor Londo. I mean, when you go down to the Tomb of Giants, you want to go there after defeating Ornstein and Smo, because after that, when those gates open and you've placed the Lord Vessel, you're able to fully explore it, so you don't have to run down, run back up, and then run down again. You could just warp down there. But I think for the purposes of this roleplay, we're going to actually have to examine ourselves going through this path and truly understanding what it means to follow righteousness in an unrighteous world. And I think for this next part, I'd like to talk a little bit about Quelaag and her sisters, the former witches of Izalith, who, upon weaving the great firestorms that were able to fight against the dragons, tried to create a second first flame, or, if you will, a second flame, to continue the Age of Fire, because, again, the Age of Fire is fading. And later on, one of the bosses we get to expounds on this, but Quelaag, in and of herself, is an abomination. She doesn't actually do anything inherently wrong other than defend the second bell of awakening. So when you consider whether or not she is morally good or evil, think about the concept of what the chosen undead is being asked to do. After gathering the Lord Vessel from Guinevere, you're asked to collect the Lord Souls, which means Quelaag, in defending the second Bell of Awakening, is inadvertently, or maybe directly, protecting her mother, who becomes the Bed of Chaos, which is a far later boss, who would have to be killed to be able to get her Lord Soul to place into the Lord Vessel, open the kiln of the first flame, and meet Gwyn. Now, we have a long way to go until we get there. But I just wanted to share that with you because a lot of times people look at Quelaag and the first thing they see is, well...
Am I going the wrong way? Is that what... Have I just been sprinting to a dead end and jumping off?
Quelaag is interesting because when you consider why she's an abomination, it's as a result of the actions of her mother. It's not necessarily something she did directly, but through trying to create a second flame and forming the Bed of Chaos from whence all the great evils would come, and transforming Quelaag into the beast that she is, Quelaag is then beset with the position of guarding her mother. When you consider whether or not something is moral, you have to look at the greater scheme of things, whether or not something is relative to the self or whether it's relative to the world. Okay, now that all of that's done, I'd like to say I wrote a little something out to kind of just make fun of the anti-wokies that come in here. And this is just a little argument you can use to support trans women being in sports, all 4 of them. We see on the media that trans women have a genetic superiority to cisgender women. I don't necessarily believe that's so. I think sports has a greater degree than just inherent athleticism. I think when you look at someone like Tom Brady and how he just liked his balls a little flat, like, there is a certain degree of preference that goes into how well someone can do while playing a game. And to truly excel actually engages the audience in a way that captivates them and provides for a greater spectacle, because that's what sport is truly all about. Therefore, I want to kind of run through some of the arguments put forth, but I'm going to define things a little bit differently. I'm not necessarily going to misgender trans women, but I'm going to try and avoid calling them women so that it can be presented under the frame of a conservative lens. If a fetus is born male, which they define as XY chromosome, but biologically speaking, that's not necessarily always the case. We don't necessarily need to get into the nuance, but when you're considering legislating against these people, you should consider the nuance. Now we acknowledge that there are men that commit to replacing their testosterone with estrogen, men being under their definition of born with the XY chromosome. So these succubi who have impaired the use of their innate sexual organs and sometimes wish to no longer have their genitals at all, these people are all naturally better at sports than cis women. This genetically superior variant of people prey on women. But I want to make something really clear. In America, we have the presumption of innocence. You can't necessarily accuse someone of a crime without substantiation. So the idea that people on the basis of their identity are inherently predators is wrong, bigoted, and honestly fucking stupid. Therefore, these succubi prey on women by being better than them at games. And then the importance of these succubi playing games with cis women, that issue is more important than all cis women and trans women included getting paid less dollar per dollar when compared to male counterparts for the same role in any profession. But trans women playing sports is the problem. That's what I don't get about the argument. Anyway, go ahead and let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a thumbs up. I'd love if you subscribed and stuck around, but if I'm not your cup of tea, that's okay. For the rest of you, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!